Let's go ahead and move into what's going on with the official. I hate that term, official, but official news regarding Russia and North Korea joining forces, which is no surprise. This should be no surprise. They've been in cahoots for a long time. They've been working together for a long time. And as we know, they are building the new Allies and Axis forces for the coming World War III. North Korea was always on team Russia. But this just makes things confirmed and more official. And this is another step, another piece of the risk board getting moved, or another piece on the risk board getting moved around. We've been seeing a lot when it comes to the preparation for the coming World War III. It is going to happen. When it's going to happen, I don't believe it's going to be while the church is still here, because that is going to be a earth-changing event, a whole entire world-changing event. And in Matthew 24, days of Noah, we're not going to be just going about our daily lives if World War III is just going ballistic all over the world. So I don't think we're going to see it, but that does not mean that we're not seeing pieces being moved around the board. And this is one of the steps that's doing it. So let's take a look. Says Putin's state visit. He just visited there to North Korea, which I got to say, I don't have it in here. But I got to say, Kim Jong-un gifted Putin a couple of really cool-looking dogs, and that's just not cool, man. I want those dogs. I just had to say. I'm a dog guy, and he was gifted dogs, and I just think it's cool. So Putin's state visit to North Korea, warm welcome, bilateral agreements, and a new comprehensive partnership treaty. Moscow and Pyongyang have agreed to enhance cooperation in all spheres and defend each other from potential foreign aggression. Again, these guys were already on the same team. They already had an agreement in place beforehand, but this is just more of a firm, final military agreement between them. Says Russian President Vladimir Putin paid a state visit to Democratic People's Republic of Korea on Wednesday, where he met with the country's leader, Kim Jong-un, and participated in comprehensive bilateral talks on economic security and global issues. That includes the war stuff. The trip marked the first time that the Russian president had traveled to North Korea since the first taking office in 2000, when he visited Pyongyang to meet with then leader Kim Jong-il. Putin's delegation included Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, which he is, if you guys want to pay attention to what Russia is doing, pay attention to Lavrov. He's a big piece when it comes to this. Then you had their Russian defense minister, health minister, transport minister, and several other senior officials, including Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov and Putin's foreign policy aide Yuri Yushakov. That's not correct, but that's the best I got. Now let's see, Yushakov, I guess. I don't know. Where's Olga? Olga, tell me how to pronounce that. It says Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Treaty. Following the bilateral negotiations, Putin and Kim signed a treaty on comprehensive strategic partnership designed to lay the groundwork for future bilateral relations in all spheres, including cultural and tourist ties, trade, economic relations, and security. This is a full-blown treaty. They had a friendship agreement in place before, and it was one that was in for several decades. This is more of a military and economic treaty now, official treaty. The agreement also includes a pledge by Russia and North Korea to assist each other in case of foreign aggression. Here we go. Pay attention to this, because this is for the upcoming World War III. To assist each other in case of foreign aggression, as both leaders decried attempts by the U.S. and its satellites to destabilize the situation in Southeast Asia. More battle lines getting drawn. Putin emphasized Pyongyang's right to take reasonable steps to ensure its security and protect its sovereignty, and vowed to engage in political and diplomatic efforts to prevent a new armed conflict on the Korean Peninsula. That doesn't mean in other places. He also doubts the indefinite restriction regime imposed on Pyongyang by the UN Security Council and urged it to be revised. Kim described the new agreement as peaceful and defensive, defensive document that provides for maintaining peace and stability in the region. He added that the treaty promotes a common interest of Russia and North Korea, and expressed confidence that it would become a driving force in accelerating the creation of a new multipolar world. Following his visit, Putin formally invited Kim to make a return visit to Moscow at some point in the future. Okay, so I've got a couple of because I went through the agreement, read through all the different articles and stuff, and I picked a few articles of the agreement that I think will apply to the upcoming future stuff. So again, let's just talk about this real quick. We've really been talking about the war stuff lately, which we haven't done in a long time, but we're seeing moves going on. We understand World War III is going to happen. It's going to happen. This stuff has to happen in order. And I've talked about how it's tied to the financial stuff. So pay attention to both sides. I know some people just like to focus on financial. Some people like to just focus on the war, but these are both going hand in hand, because when World War III kicks off, it's definitely going to be a part of destroying, like finalizing the destruction of the global economy in order to bring in the new economy that they're wanting to do. These are going to go hand in hand, and this has a lot to do with territorial control, getting powers into structures that they need to, the economy that's coming, and there's some other aspects to what's going to happen as well. I had them in my head, and I just immediately forgot them as soon as I was going to tell them. But this is all a part of what's coming, and population control. That's the other thing. Controlling the numbers, that's going to be a part of this as well. This is why we continue to see so many countries out there all employing drafts and conscriptions and stuff. I talked about that 2 Saturdays ago. So if you want to know more about what's going on with all that stuff, make sure you head on back to that episode, and I'll fill you in. Past me will fill you in. But it's going to happen. I just don't believe, and I mean, I firmly believe that it's just not going to happen while we're here. Because again, that is a global, earth-shaking event that is going to happen that I just don't see us being here for when it happens. But we are seeing those pieces, the conscription stuff, the financial stuff, what's going on with Saudi Arabia, what we see in the Middle East right now. Preparations are being prepared for that as well. Understand, go back in history. Albert Pike talks about the 3 world wars. The third one is getting ready. It's getting set up exactly as they said it was going to happen. We see what's going on, and it's going to begin. I know a lot of people say it's going to start in the West. No, it's going to start in the Middle East, and then West will kick off after that, in my opinion. That's my opinion. I'm not saying but that's how the Freemasons plan this to happen, so I'm just going based on that. But let's keep going with this agreement, and we'll see what else is going on. So let's take a look at the articles. Again, we could just read the news stuff, but they don't necessarily go into exactly what's going on. So I got a few articles here I want to point out. Article 3 of this greedy treaty between Russia and North Korea. This treaty, Article 3 says the parties shall cooperate with each other to ensure lasting regional and international peace and security. Everybody's favorite term that seems to always get applied falsely when it comes to prophecy. In the event of an immediate threat of an act of armed aggression against one of the parties, one of either Russia or North Korea, the parties themselves, at the request of one of the parties, shall immediately use bilateral channels for consultations in order to coordinate their positions and agree on possible practical measures to assist each other to help eliminate the emerging threat. So when one is threatened, if a party calls for help, then the other party shall help accordingly. Article 4, if one of the parties is subjected to an armed attack by any state or several states, if one of the parties of North Korea or Russia is subjected to an armed attack by any state or several states, NATO, and thus finds itself in a state of war, the other party will immediately provide military and other assistance with all means at its disposal in accordance with Article 51 of the UN Charter, in accordance with legislation of North Korea and the Russian Federation. So that means when stuff kicks off, the official ties, military ties, will kick in, and it will continue into World War III. Okay. It says Article 17, the parties will cooperate in the fight against international terrorism and other challenges and threats, including extremism, transnational organized crime, human trafficking, UK, or not UK, Ukraine, and hostage taking. Illegal migration, very interesting there. Illicit financial flows, legalization or laundering of proceeds from crime, terrorist financing, and financing of proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. We see a lot of movement when it comes to that stuff. Illegal actions that pose a threat to the safety of civil aviation and maritime navigation. Illegal trafficking of goods, funds, and monetary instruments, as well as illegal trafficking of narcotic drugs, psychotropic substances, and their precursors, weapons, cultural, and historical values. They go through a giant list of things that can basically open up a window for war to begin. Weapons and drugs and immigration. We see what's going on with that and all this type of stuff. Ukraine, I mean, half of that list is Ukraine ultimately. So that's important to understand. So they're basically giving themselves a door to kick this thing off in any way that they see fit according to this agreement. Article 23, this agreement is valid for an indefinite period of time. So it just goes. There's no end. So that's key as well. Their timeline is whenever they see fit, according to the table or the shadow government. If one of the parties intends to terminate this agreement, it must notify the other party in writing. This agreement is terminated 1 year from the date of receipt of written notice by the other party. It was signed June 19th, 2024 in North Korea. Both have copies in their own native language. And of course, signed by Kim Jong-un as well as Vladimir Putin. So I just wanted to give some details on that. Unfortunately, I'm still seeing a lot of like fear-mongering clickbait news regarding the war that's supposedly going to happen yesterday or the day before or a year ago, and it still hasn't happened. It's about to blow up anytime, right? We just need to continue to have level heads. That's something that's important. It's something that I've learned over the years that I've been doing this as well. Because you go back a couple years, you can't find those episodes anymore. But if you go back a few years ago, when I was reporting on stuff with the war stuff, I was one of those people. I'm like, it could happen tomorrow, and I've learned since then. Since then, I've grown. I've done study, and I've used my head, common sense, and logic on making sure this stuff goes together with how they usually do this stuff. You go through history, and there's, again, financial ties and military ties all connected all throughout history. Again, I'm one of those people that talks about when it comes to wars that we've seen, and yes, that includes things like World War II, World War I, and all the other ones as well. They were all orchestrated in some type of way for some type of land, money, power, any type of those things. It needed a shift, a financial shift, power shift, however it wants to do, in order to set up the risk board how the cabal fits, or how cabal sees fit. And this is another situation where they're getting ready with World War III. And we know when we study scripture that Revelation tells us that Antichrist beast system is going to come in, and in order for that system to take place, or to get plugged in, to get turned on, everything has to be removed that's already there. And that includes economy, that includes governance, and that includes religion. And so you're going to need something big to do that. And they are planning that, which is why they're just not ready yet. They're not ready yet. And we can see that when we look at the scripture, or not the scripture, but the news coming out right now. They're still moving pieces around that need to be in place and working before things happen. And this was one of them. And so we just saw it happen in front of us, which means another step closer to getting off of this rock.